Hi, Chapter 6, Project Time Management. This is one chapter I know I'm not going to get through the whole video because there's just so much involved in developing project statuses or schedules, but they are important. Probably most project managers cite that if they didn't have some kind of schedule delivered, you never deliver on time. It's also one of the biggest challenges. The old phrase "garbage in, garbage out" comes to mind when I can have a best plan, but if I'm getting bad data coming in, I may not get the results I want. So schedules end up being probably the biggest headache for most project managers. Just keeping them updated, make sure everything's realistic, both setting up and tracking. So I'll go through some of the basics in this, and if I don't get through everything, hopefully what I leave behind you can pick up. If you don't, give me a buzz. There are probably about 7 or 8 different practices or policies. The planning schedule management, basically you need to understand make sure that you understand the policies, procedures, and how each company wants to document their projects. Some like Microsoft projects, some have their own in-house tools. Who needs to be involved? So you just got to make sure you understand what the company you're working for has laid out for you. But the biggest thing is you need to make sure, what am I doing? What does this project do? What are the activities? What are the specific tasks that need to be done? By who? Who's the important stakeholders to make sure that this project gets everything delivered it's supposed to? Once I understand all the activities, then I worry about, okay, are we doing the activities in the right sequence? So I need to identify the relationships between the different activities. Once you identify the relationships, now I got to figure out, okay, what are the resources? Is it just people? Is it machinery? Is it software? What is it? It could be a tractor. It could be a plow. It could be, but in IT, most of it is people, software, computers. Those are the resources you worry about. Once I understand the resources and I understand the sequencing, now I focus on what are the activities. How long is it going to take each of these activities? Once I've identified all the effort, then I can put the schedule together. Once I get the schedule, then I can use the tools available. Microsoft Project is the one we're going to use in this class. Probably used by a lot of different, but there are other companies out there that make either free or for fee tools to be used. But this class we use Microsoft Project 13. And then once you get a project scheduled and approved, then the hard work comes. It's how do I control it? How do I, as the project starts, how do I maintain, change, modify the plan as things progresses? So here, like I said, the project schedule management is basically, I have to understand how this company wants me to form a plan, a schedule plan. What is its methodology? We're talking about 2 here, right? We're talking about agile development and waterfall. Most of the activities we're going to do in this class is waterfall, but if a company says, hey, I use agile, you're going to change your scheduling technique and methodology, won't you? I got to make sure I understand the accuracy. How we measure. We do it in minutes, days, hours, weeks, months. So these are some of the things you need to understand as you're thinking about what are the basic guidelines. So the first thing, just identify the activity. What is the activity or task? And last week we talked about work breakdown structures, and normally it is found in the work breakdown structure. Sometimes you'll find that a work breakdown structure is not refined enough, and you will break that down to sub-tasks. So you have something that you can get your hands around and be able to estimate the amount of time. So you need to understand what are the different activities. With that you'll come up with an activity list. in that you'll have, okay, what is the name? You'll make sure you have some kind of identification number. Most of these systems being computers based, they do a whole lot better indexing activities based on activity ID numbers. And then, of course, some basic description. So you want to, when you see your reports and charts, you understand what's being done. And then you got to decide, what are the basic attributes? What is this activity made up of? What has to be done before I start this activity? Who gets the output when I'm done with the activity? Are there any resource requirements, constraints, imposed dates? I can't start before, I can't finish after. What are the assumptions? And most of your tools, Microsoft Project has a whole list of areas that you can set up these attributes to. And to the homework assignments, you're going to get a chance to play with the attributes as far as scheduling and effort. Now, one of those activities can be a milestone. Now, based on which tool you're using, sometimes a milestone has a 0 time estimate or 0 effort. It's just a point in time that everybody's shooting for. Microsoft Project allows you to do put a time estimate, but it basically is, this is a target date that in some companies make it hard and fast that you can't miss these milestones, but it's a way of just targets on the process of developing the project. Okay, so now that you got all the activities, you got all the milestones, now you got to worry about the sequencing. And basically, how do I get these sequences? I got to make sure I got to understand. I got to make sure that I know the details of all the activities, what goes on, who does it, what are my dependencies, before I can start, what do I need? So I must understand what does it take to get started, who's going to be the next. So pretty much thinking, what's my input, what's my output of this particular activity. And you can have multiple dependencies, either both on the input or on the output. Just depends on the activity. Now, there's different types of dependencies. Sometimes they're mandatory. They call it, referred to as hard logic. But it says, hey, based on this, they're fixed. You must have this dependency. Discretionary dependencies, if the project team says, I'm going to kind of create this dependency. Maybe it's you have a review. I can't release the code until I have my walkthrough, my review. Or it could be an external dependency. What about I'm using an outside vendor that's going to use a tractor or a forklift that I need to make sure is available at the time we're moving heavy equipment. So sometimes they are external. Once I have those relationships, then I can create what they call network diagrams. So basically, it's a logical way to represent it. It's actually more of a visual way to represent these activities and who is it dependent on. What are the logical relationships between the different activities? Sometimes you'll get the arrow diagram. Sometimes you get the precedence diagram. You'll find the precedent diagramming method probably works well or better with Microsoft Project and some of the online tools. But just know there are a couple of different ways. Here's a network diagramming using an arrow technique. Using that arrow diagramming. It pretty much says I've got an activity. It takes, going from item 1 to item 2 or node 1 to node 2 takes, activity A takes 1 day. So you're defining the activity and you're putting the estimates together. And this gives you a nice graphical picture of how to do it. And there's a lot of information you can do this. I can say, okay, how long is it going to take to get my project complete? I can look at this a little bit later. What's the critical path? What's the things along the path that it's going to take the longest amount of effort to get from point A to point B, or from item 1 to item 8? And if that longest item moves out of date, the estimate for J goes to 4. What does that do to for node 8? It pushes it out a date. So, oops. Now your precedence model diagramming method, they just represent in boxes, and the activities show relationships. This you'll find will look better when you look into Microsoft Project. You can put a lot of the dependencies and dependency descriptions, characteristics of an activity in one box, and it just shows everything in a more graphic picture. It's just an easier way of doing things. Now there are different dependency types, and basically it's a relationship between starting and finishing. Most projects and most things we work with end up being the start and finish to start. So I can't start activity B until activity A is finished. But there are other options. But you'll find that probably 95% of it are going to be finish to start. So now, estimating resources, activity resources. This is probably the hard, because you've got to remember, resources can be people, equipment, and materials. Most IT projects, it's people. Maybe people and computers, but for the most part, it's people. How long is it going to take them to develop this requirement? How long is it going to take them to code it? How long is it going to taste it? How long is it going to take to write up the test spec? How long is it going to take to write the user's document? All of those things require estimates. Now, to do that, some people like to create a resource breakdown structure. Basically, what are the different types of resources by both category and type? So it could be programmers and individuals. Could be computers. Could be hardware machinery. So it could be a number of things. Then it's estimating duration. I got the activity, I know the dependencies. How long am I going to do it? Now, duration is actually the amount of time plus any calendar time that's elapsed from the start of this activity. Now, don't mix effort with duration. Effort's the amount of work that has to take place, more of just an effort duration, where duration is more calendar time. So just not necessarily equal, but basically you still have to make some estimate as far as duration is concerned. Now some people say I like to get a 3-point estimate. So basically, what's the optimistic, most likely, or most pessimistic? And then some algorithms like PERT, it's a program, I don't know whether I get to in this video or not, puts those estimates together and come up with a value. And once you got all those estimates and resources, now I can develop the schedule. Now I can use my project management tool, Microsoft Project, to kind of create this whole plan, starting to finish. And what you're going to see in this class is you're going to use Gantt charts, and which then will show you what the critical path is on this. Gantt charts are basically it's just a graphical picture to lay out a list of activities and how they relate to the calendar. You see several symbols, meaning different things. Pay attention to Microsoft Project as to what those symbols represent. Here's an example of what a Gantt chart is. So last week you did the work breakdown structure, and you kind of got a little bit of this Gantt chart picture, but now when you put more development efforts, you'll see more data in there. So you can add milestones to Gantt charts. You can have a tracking Gantt chart, which says, okay, now I used what did I plan compared to actual work that was done, and you can compare the two. Microsoft Project has a very useful tool in tracking that. Now, critical path method is a diagramming technique to develop this, but I'm not going to get time to go into that. Go ahead and look at it at your leisure. A lot of this other stuff, I'm going to run out of time. But there are some things that you want to do to be able to shorten the path when you think there's project manager. I can crash a project. Can I look at doing things in parallel? Can I verify things correctly? So with that, keep in mind you're going to Murphy's Law. You're going to just remember that work always fills the time allotted. And as you can see in my video, I got more time than I got stuff to do.